check 1 2. Mic testing 1 2. Check 1 2. Unaipata? Iko kwa raif. Hapo hiyo earphones iko kwa machini. Check 1 2. Nimeshaichukua.
Hamjambo. Hamjambo tena. Nachukua nafasi hii kuwashukuru sana wale ambao tumeweza kufika siku ya leo kwa sababu ya mjadala ambao uko mbele zetu, ambapo tutakuwa na nafasi nzuri ya kuzungumza mengi kuhusu the National Building Code, ambayo pia ni regulations za ujenzi. Na haswa tunataka kuwashukuru wale ambao wametoka sehemu hii ya Embu na maeneo ambayo yako karibu katika Embu kwa vile ambavyo mmejitolea na kuwa pamoja nasi. So we consider this to be a very important activity, and we are very happy that you managed to join us. And we hope as we move along, then all of us will enjoy this process together. This is the National Construction Authority, and the authority is ably represented by the directors from the board of NCA. We also have committee members who are going around publicizing this document and allowing the general public to make their comments through the public participation. We also have officers from this region of Embu, ambao wako pamoja nasi. We know that they are the people who are serving you in this region. And then we also have the general public, who are people in contracting. We have government officers who are shortly joining us. And majority of us, of course, will be here for today's participation. Now, before we commence, allow me to request one of us to make a prayer for us. So if there's someone, especially, kuna mzee rafiki yangu tumejuana sana, na ningependa kukupatia nafasi hii ya kwamba utuombee ili tuweze kuendelea na siku ya leo. So our team will give you a mic.
Asante sana Bwana Matthew. Kwa jina mimi naitwa Bernard Mwilu. Na tuombe. Asante Mungu wa inji, Muumba wa inji na ardhi. Tunakutuko hapa hasa wakati wa Embu. Tumekuja hapa hasa Mungu kuja hata kujadiliana, kwa sababu ulisema wote ana jambo akuje musikize, muongee, mueleana. Ni asante sana Mungu tangu asubuhi kuja kufika hata saa hii. Na wale walitoka mbali na wale walitoka karibu. Asante Mungu, tunakurudishia shukrani kwa sababu wewe Mungu tulikuwa tunakuja saa wakati huu wa mambo mengi ya dunia, lakini umetuwezesha mpaka tufike mpaka hapa na tunashukuru. Ni asante, wacha sasa tuanze pamoja, alafu tuendelee mpaka tamati. Na tukifika tamati Mungu hatutakosa kukurudishia asante na kujua wewe ndio Muumba na ndio unatupenda. Tunaomba hao machache kwa jina la Yesu Kristo tunaomba. Amen.
Amen. Asante sana mzee rafiki yetu. Tumeshukuru sana. Sasa tunaanza mpango wetu tukiwa tumechelewa kidogo. Tumepoteza muda kama walisali 1:30 hivi, lakini natarajia tutakapokuwa tunaendelea tutapata jinsi ya kuokoa ule muda. Hivyo basi bila kupoteza muda mwingi, ningependa kuwatambulisha wanakamati ambao wamejiunga pamoja nasi. Kazi yao imekuwa kuja kuongea na watu wa Embu. Jana waliweza kuongea na watu wa Nyeri, na wiki ijayo pia kamati hii itaweza kuongea na watu wa pale Garissa na maeneo ambayo yako karibu na Garissa. Ningependa kuwaorodhesha kulingana na vile wameorodheshwa kwa listi yangu. Kwanza kabisa ningependa kumuita Architect Samuel Gitimo tuweze kumuona tu kwa njia ya kuinuka na yeah, you can just wave Architect. Asante sana. Yeah, tujambo. Asante. Then tunaye Daktari Catherine Kariuki. Asante sana Daktari, pia ambaye ni mwalimu wangu. Tunaye George Karoki. Asante sana George. Thank you very much. Tunaye Peter. Peter sijui kama ako huko nyuma. Peter Msango. Asante sana Peter. Huyo ni Peter. Tunaye Jane Maina. Jane ambaye pia ni engineer kutoka KEBS. Asante sana Jane. Na mwisho kabisa tunaye kiongozi wetu wa secretariat ambaye anatusaidia kupata nakala ambazo tunazitumia, kalamu, na kumake sure tunapoendelea hapa mambo yetu yote iko sawa. Anaitwa Darius Kimani. Asante sana Darius. Darius ndio huyo. Na mimi jina langu naitwa David Mathu Njuguna. I'm a county surveyor and also a general manager, National Construction Authority. Na sasa hivi, I think from the part of the management, my directors, that is over. I want to hand over to you. Yes, Director, so that you can make your remarks. Director Koge, you make your brief remarks and then welcome us now to make the presentations. Karibu sana, Director.
Thank you, QS. Asante sana. Na wageni wetu, asante kwa kufika. Vile kizungu wanasema, we don't take it for granted. Tuwezi fikiria tu ati lazima mungekuja. Mungekuwa na shughuli mingi, na najua mko na shughuli mingi. Lakini leo mumeamua hata hii pia ni ya muhimu. Na mkapata nafasi tuungane pamoja. Sasa sisi leo sijui kama maybe we would introduce ourselves. Mimi kwa jina Stephen Kogi. Mimi ni director kwa board ya NCA. Na mwenzangu pia director hapa Waweru Kadesha, architect. Na iko Paul Kiagu atakuja, yuko hapa ameketi pande yangu ya kulia. So karibuni sana. Tuko na our local NCA who will also be, and rightfully also, the host of this place. For me, it is pleasure. It is a pleasure to be here today. I don't know whether this, you can stand and... Okay, thank you. For me today is very important. It's an important day because the building industry or construction industry is what I have known most of my working life. And there's been a passion in it because everyone in one way or another is involved in construction. Either is living in a structure, is using infrastructure, or is intending to put up some structure. So all of us, in one way or another, we are involved in these structures and building sector. So I'll read the notes so that maybe it helps us to also gather and there will be a presentation from our presenter. But maybe it is good that I take you through what has happened as regard to buildings and regulations of the same over time. So when you start with the history, we know very well it's been a regulated sector, and that has been through the building code. And what the building code, the physical planning laws, and other related statutes. And we also know the building code, current building code actually dates back to 1968. So it's a fairly old building code. So being a 1968, you can call it an outdated. And it is the one that governs the building. However, we also know, using the same building code, we have put up some of our magnificent structures in Kenya. So, as one of my colleagues says, we have to look at the building code, we have to look at the new regulations that we are bringing, as what guides us, but what is very important is also our minds. What is it that we really want to do? Do we want to put up good structures? Do you want to put up safe structures? Do you want to protect others who are also coming into the structure? Do we want to take care of the people who have certain maybe disabilities? Are we taking care of them? So if we already have that in spirit, then the building code becomes a very good document that will guide us from a technical perspective. So being 1968, it is, we can say it is old, outdated, but it had very positive things in it, and the new one we are building on it. Of course, when there were building failures, incidences of building failures and collapses, it brought into light, why don't we relook at this building code? Is it tight enough? Is it something that can regulate or try to protect our public from these incidences of building failures? So you will find that in 1990s, a lot of this awareness came in. And one of the things that resulted is the famous Dr. Motiso, the architect, led commission, which did study the existing laws, the bylaws and regulations, and came up with recommendations with a view of stopping similar incidences in the future. Most famous, of course, was Sunbeam at that time. And then there was a famous Kihonge building downtown. Those are the things that brought up a lot of this awareness that we should relook at the documents we've had. After all, even our new constitution, we had to relook at the constitution and come up with something that is on modern time. So several attempts have been made over time, but due to one reason or another, we've not been able to achieve what we are intending to achieve now. So even in the task force was by the coalition government actually came up with a task force in April 2009. It reviewed this, the building code. It came up with a very good document, but maybe because there was no process like we are doing today, participation, stakeholder participation, it did not go to conclusion. So come the building code 2020. So in 2019, the cabinet finally gave direction to finalize this document, the building code. And to be able to finalize, you of course have to be anchored in law. And cabinet looked at the NCA Act being the umbrella body that is responsible for construction, and it made it fit, or it saw it fit, that this building code should rest in NCA, or anchored in NCA, and also enforcement at NCA. So laws was enacted by amending the business laws, and the business laws you amended also the NCA Act on around March 2020. That came up with now the new amended act that allows it to be anchored, this code to be anchored in NCA Act. So following that, of course, you know very well that once you do something like that, public participation has to come in, and to guide the process, the principal secretary in 2019 at the end, in November, appointed a committee to review and finalize the draft building code. And the National Construction Authority, of course, to steer the process. So this is what is happening now. The committee, which we have had the privilege of being introduced to, had several workshops, and it reviewed various thematic areas that are in all these construction processes. It consulted stakeholders, the key stakeholders. It discussed with the people like the professional associations, the government agencies, council of governors, private sector, and other interested groups. And in the process, after doing all that, this committee came up with an endorsed draft of the Building Code 2020, which I hope all of us have been able to access. If you go to the website, NC website, it is there in full, and we still have time. We can look at it. We can see what areas needs to be improved, so the door is not closed today. Of course, like all processes in government, the Attorney General has to look at any document that is touching on law, that is being driven by the government, and indeed any other document that will affect the Kenyan people. The Attorney General looked at the draft and approved it to be presented to the stakeholders. And of course, always it's supposed to be done both physically and virtually, and that's why it is in the website, in the government website, so that everyone can access it from wherever he is. And the beauty with that is that even someone who is not resident in Kenya can still look at the document and be able to comment in it. Even non-Kenyans, because they are also affected, they are also living with us, they can look at the document and comment, and all these comments are taken into consideration. The committee is there and ready, and NCA, of course, to take into consideration. So the outcomes is that we are expected to operationalize this draft building code so that we have a healthier, safer, more convenient building environment, and of course to optimize the use of the resources that we have. So it's a fairly comprehensive document that looks at all those areas of the habitation. It looks about what you are using, the materials you are using, the resources you are using. So it's about optimization and living in a healthier and safer environment. So obviously, what are we expecting once this document is enacted? We are expecting it will promote enhanced professionalism and reduction in corrupt practices, because it will be clear what you want. Because sometimes this vice is spread because it is not clear what you want, and therefore it is left to some people to decide what is right. This document is supposed to open up so that you can self-assess, both professional and individuals, and reduces the chances of corruption. So that, of course, there are certain things that it hopes to, or it aims to do. Streamlining the approval process. That is one of the aim. And when you streamline, of course, you reduce the chances of this vice. Enhancing accountability, and you're looking at qualified persons at any instance who would be doing or participating in this exercise. From a contractual perspective, we are looking at the document helping the industry in reducing construction claims due to things like clarity of roles of all the parties in the contract. The document aims also to enhance collaboration, coordination among all the actors in the industry. And then principally and fundamentally, the document is coming away from a prescriptive material specifying that is there in 1968 document to one that is a performance-based regime. And this allows creativity, because I will be telling you that I want a building that can be accessible comfortably by the person with a disability. It allows you flexibility in terms of creativity in coming up with a structure. Of course, we also know there is, from the KEBS, we also have documents that specifies the minimum that you should be able to achieve. But what you're saying, it allows creativity in the way you are doing things. Because at the end of the day, we are looking at performance more than just telling you this is the kind of material we want you to use. We are expecting that it will enhance or increase the investors in the industry because there is a bit of flexibility in the way we prescribe performance. So there are many people who would, for example, out of the country, who want to come and bring new technology of doing things which has helped them to achieve certain levels of development in their view, but they feel like our code, our regulation is so prescriptive that they cannot be able to bring in their technology. So this document allows anyone who feels he has that kind of innovation to come up and tell us, I'll be able to achieve this within a certain period of time. And I'll give you a better product at a more cost-effective consideration. And of course, it allows, by doing that, you're allowing an industrialization, so that we are coming from a fully determined quality of work to one that I can go to the supermarket and buy a whole building and come and we just put it up. In developed countries like America, there are famous things like Home Depot, where there is a lot of do-it-yourself, because there are a lot of things which have been industrialized, and you've been able to get the specifications so well in terms of performance that you can industrialize the construction of our buildings. That makes it faster, it makes it more usable, makes it more adaptable to any place that we want to put it. And of course, we expect the building code to promote a safe, planned, attractive, and inclusive built environment. This, it's expected that every 5 years, we are expected to look at our environment and see what has changed, what technologies have changed, IT-based kind of technology-based. We adapt that and we are able to revise the document so that it allows for that kind of innovative. Our young people today are coming up with very many innovative ideas. It's a document that allows people to come up and assure us that if you bring in this kind of inclusion, the industry will grow much faster and better than we are doing before. It also allows us, as a construction industry, to provide for construction risks management. These are things that with time has become a very major thing, risk management in the built environment. So the document, in a way, helps each party to manage risks and even to identify who is responsible for which risks, which is very, very important. It also allows that it is not only in certain communities in terms of status that are able to live comfortably, because previously the prescriptive nature of the document was only allowing comfortable living for those people who are able to afford that kind of level of prescriptive. But now we are saying this document allows all across the board people to live in comfortable, structures. My mud house at home, that document should allow me to put up a structure that can be approved as long as it takes care of all the performance-related aspects of a habitable building. Because it was very ironical, there are some things that we say we cannot approve. You go to the counties or city council, whichever it is, but when you go to some areas like the park, you find the same things which cannot meet the approval criteria are being used, and people are paying a lot of money to live in those kind of structure. So this document is supposed to look at those kind of aspects and allow and encourage that everyone lives comfortably and safely, irrespective of the status. In conclusion, we have specific roles that NCA is going to play in this implementation of the building regulations. NCA is going to offer the overall coordination of the implementation of the building regulations. NCA is, we are hoping to, after this process is completed, will issue the guidelines on aspects that relate to construction safety, construction processes, building materials, and equipment, among others. Because definitely after passing these regulations, then there will be guidelines that now actualize these or make it easier for the players. And NCA is placing itself in a position that it will be able to guide the industry to make it much safer and more economical. So we are also expected to carry out a mandatory inspection of all ongoing construction process. And some of these things were missing in our NCA Act before. We were mainly dealing with what is coming up, but now with this amendment, we are going to go into buildings because a lot of our people in the towns, our stakeholders, they call us that we are seeing this building. I'm suspecting it is having a crack. I heard some sound. The people working there, they don't look like they know what they are doing. So this, the Act and amendments now allows us to go in and look at what is being done at any time. So that also helps us in quality assurance and adherence to standards by the industry. Of course, finally, the monitoring this kind of processes, like this stakeholder conference, to see that all stakeholders participate adequately in whatever law, regulations, and guidelines that are being prepared that will affect our people. Lastly, I urge all stakeholders to interrogate the draft building regulations 2020 and submit comments and views in order to further enrich these documents. With that, thank you very much for listening to me. We hope to have a fruitful engagement during the day, and we are available so that we can make the day a more fruitful to this document and to the construction industry. Asante sana, Mungu awabariki.
Many thanks, Director Kogi, for those very good remarks and also very wise remarks. Now, ladies and gentlemen, as I had alluded earlier, our program is running late, and I would request at this point, we have one major item that ought to had come by now, and that is the presentation of the draft building code 2020. But then I'm requesting if we can all agree so that we allow the other activities of the facility to move on. We slowly step out. We give ourselves between 10 and 15 minutes. On the higher side, actually 10 minutes. We quickly grab a cup of tea and whatever snacks are there, and then we come back. When we come back, we'll have a presentation by Dr. Catherine and again also by Architect Getimo, and immediately after their presentation, we'll get into the plenary session. That will allow us to manage our time in a more efficient way, and then we can make really good progress. Again, thank you so much, directors. Director Paul, you are introduced by Director Engineer Koge when you're out, and karibu sana. Thank you very much. Let's break for a cup of tea, then we come back.
1 2 1 2. Mic testing 1 2.
you have an idea of who is here. Yeah. Okay. Okay. Even the hangouts.
I would like to call this meeting back to order. And now I hope you have enjoyed our refreshments. And the short break has worked towards replenishing us. Now we have the presenter for this morning, who is Dr. Catherine Kariuki. Dr. Catherine Kariuki is based at the University of Nairobi in the Department of Real Estate and Construction Management. And she's been part and parcel of this process of coming up with a renewed building code for quite a few years now. The earlier version alluded to in 2009, she was part of that process. She's still part of the process this time round. And therefore, we are very much privileged to be having a very knowledgeable person in this area of the building code making the presentations this morning. So, Daktari, I would like to invite you. She'll share the presentation with Architect Getimu, who is also very knowledgeable on matters building code, being a practicing architect, and again also being a senior officer at the State Department of Public Works. So karibuni sana, they'll do it in a very summarized way so that they can give us enough time to react to their submissions. Karibu sana, Daktari.
Good morning. Okay, thank you, Mr. Matthew. I come from the built environment discipline, but more in the maintenance side of buildings, not on the design or construction. And I always argue that at the end of the day, we are the ones left with the building. The architects design, then the contractor builds. So within 24 months, your work is finished. For the rest of the life of the building, which can be 50 years, 100 years, 500 years, that is a building that we look after. So the building code is very important. And as I came in, I was talking to a lady at the registration desk, and I was just telling her this building is very nice. But I immediately told her I could see some signs of defects on the wall. So as you also look at the space that you are living in, just be able to pick out what are the problems, and that is, I think, what we are trying to cure. That the building should serve as not just for the time of construction, but the life of the building. So I'll speak to the space. I know the previous speaker introduced us to the history of the code. So I'll just start on the actual code itself, very summarized. So the beginning of the code looks at definitions, and the definitions, again, we will try to identify definitions that are not the same way you define it under the English dictionary. And the example you again here is like when we define the term engineer is a person who is registered and licensed under the Engineers Act of 2011. Then fire damper, what does it mean? And is it different from a damper as you see it in the English dictionary? So the code has been designed to be performance-based, so it's not prescriptive, which was very much the old code, which told you you have to use this, you have to do that, you have to do the other. So really we are saying the industry, as you construct, now you can respond to performance aspects of construction and the materials, meaning that we are telling you you can use any material so long as it is performance-based and can stand the safety standards that are given. So obviously that then leaves room for you to innovate. So the purpose of the code is to promote order and safety in the construction works. As you construct as contractors, we are also saying you need to be safe in the space that you're working in. We're also looking for the health and safety of persons in and about construction works. So even those who are living in the building, those who are constructing, and those who are outside of the construction site, meaning that if I'm a passerby as you construct, that my safety should also be ensured. So the scope then of the code is to design, construct, operation, maintenance, and demolition of buildings. So you can see we are starting from the beginning, and operation very important because that's a longer life of the building. The maintenance aspect, we need to look after the building so that it can serve the purpose for what it was meant to be. And then at the end, when we demolish, how do we demolish a building safely? And now these days, I know the code has an issue with the use of second-hand materials, but we are saying that is something that will change and allow you, because obviously we are also all using second-hand materials. So we should be allowed to do that in a sense for sustainability and be able to recycle materials. There will be standards for building materials, systems, and services. That is also in the code. Then there are also standards for operations and disaster management in construction sites, again to ensure safety for those who are constructing. Then within the code, there is also safety and security of users and occupants of the building, so that when we're in a building like this, we don't feel maybe I should not be here for much longer. And I think now, even with the COVID, it becomes even more important. How are we constructing so that you also not just safe from the construction itself, but also the air quality within the building is also assured, so that when I leave the Kenya School of Government, I'll feel safe and say I was in a building that is certified COVID safe. So the code is an adaptive law, and why adaptive is because we are leaving it to the counties to also use the code and adapt it to the needs of their community and the materials that are available within their particular areas. So it focuses on building control, and this is important because even as we talk to the planners, we almost are feeling planners look at development control as we are looking at the building itself. So there's no conflict. We are saying there's harmony with the Physical Land Use and Planning Act, which is a new act of 2019. Then it also works in harmony with all the other laws that we know, the Standards Act, and very important, we have somebody from KEBS here who you can even talk to in terms of standards, and she says you decide which material that you want to use and then bring it to KEBS for a standard. You're working with this code also appreciates other laws like the Kenya Roads Act, the Water Act, the Public Health Act. And the Public Health Act is very important because if your building is unhealthy, what we call sometimes sick buildings, the Public Health Act inspectors can actually close it. And they can even ask you to demolish it. So it's important, even as you read this code, you also read these other acts that we pointed out. Then the Environmental Management and Coordination Act, which is EMCA. Also, I suppose whenever you're seeking approval for a building, you need to go to NEMA. Then we have the Occupational Safety and Health Act of 2007. We are talking Energy Act as well. And then the Land Acts, starting with the Land Registration Act, You look at the Land Act as well, the Land Control Act, all those acts that are land related would also be of importance as we look at the code. So part 2 looks at siting and space about buildings. So why do we look at siting and space about buildings? And this is really, again, to ensure health and safety of users. Those inside the buildings, but those also outside the building. So the code should obviously be compliant with the planning requirements. And that's why even for you contractors, you need to read these together with the Physical Land Use and Planning Act. Issues of frontage, so that you do not obstruct the road outside. Issues of, excuse me, issues of view, excuse me. As you come out of a space, are you able to access the road outside without blocking traffic? And then we have means of access, again, that is also important. And then the fact that a building shouldn't obstruct, endanger, or cause nuisance. Because you're not living in a vacuum, or you're not building in a vacuum. So your building should not be a source of nuisance with neighboring spaces. And this is why NEMA then is important when they do their stakeholders, or they require you to also be part of agreeing whether a building should go on or not. Then a building should not, within this siting and space, should not be erected in a manner that reduces the quantity of air and air available to another building. And this is important even as we build buildings back to back, that you ensure that you're not denying your neighbor air that flows freely into that building. You're not even blocking light from for the other building as we also construct. Just be mindful. But now this will be under law, even as we talk about being mindful of our neighbors. Part 3 looks at parking spaces. So it stipulates the requirements for parking and external circulation, so that when I come into a parking space, I'm able to have the standard parking space as required, but you're also able to circulate. Then specifies also barrier to be erected on a pathway for use by people where vehicles have access. So looking after not just the driver or the vehicle, but also that pedestrian in that particular area. Within parking spaces, if you have access to a floor, or roof, or a ramp for the vehicles, then it's also part of the building, and therefore the specifications are being given in this building code. So specifies the minimum requirements for ramps, and also gives parking recommendations, so that you don't have very tiny parking areas, so that when you open the door of your vehicle, then it hits the next vehicle, hits a wall or a pillar. Part 4 looks at site preparation, and this is really saying that before you elect your building or alter or scaffolding or even demolition of a building, the owner of that building shall erect a fence. And I think a lot of people are doing that now. So erecting a fence, hoarding, or barricade, and this is to prevent the public from entering the plot. And very important, not just to prevent them, but also to protect them from activities at the plot. And we've known accidents that happen outside of the plot, on the pavement or on the road, when a stone or materials fall from a building and have killed people. I was sharing yesterday, there was one student engineer who was killed by a stone that fell from a building. And I knew that that student engineer, so it's very close to my heart, that aspect of safety. So that consideration for site safety, unstable soil has to be assessed by the civil engineer, and a report is submitted, and I think that you're already aware. Different soils need different considerations. The owner also has a responsibility to limit dust and noise, and also handle nuisance and any construction waste. Within the site, I think contractors, you're required to provide a kitchen facility and also sanitary facilities, even now. So we are saying that the code now tells you you don't have a choice, you have to do that. Then part 5 is looking at building materials. And the building materials here, what we are saying, again, performance-based, not prescriptive, but they must comply with the standards Act Cap 496 of KEBS. And this, I think when you talk to our engineer on the standards, she'll tell you even the stabilized soil blocks have a standard. And the EPS panels also have a standard. So already the alternative building technologies are being given a standard by KEBS, and therefore we can use them now. So considerations for circular economy are not locked out, as long as the material is used in construction, should comply with the relevant standard. So we are saying any material, mud, stone, sticks, brick, roofing material that is grass, thatch, grass thatch, or makuti, all those materials can now have always been used. But I think if you listen to the previous speaker, he said those are used in the tourist hotels, but we have not used them. But now we can use them so long as they comply to the standards required by KEBS. So part 6 looks at structural design. And here we are saying that the building should comply with Eurocode 0 to Eurocode 9. Why we're using Eurocode now is because initially we used the British standards, but those have been overtaken by this. So the design then should comply with the requirements of limit state designs. And then the design should be prepared, especially the structural system should be prepared by a civil engineer. And all this obviously means that the engineer must carry out inspections at intervals as he deems necessary. So the need then to have professionals on your site. And I think NCA is very clear that they will also be having a checklist to see whether you actually have those professionals checking your work as you also construct. Then the structural, continued on the structural design, that the exertion that is more than 3 meters deep shall be designed by a civil engineer, and adequate supervision and quality control should be provided at all stages of design and construction of structural work. If you have a building with 4 stories in height, this, if you're looking at a foundation, this should have a geotechnical investigation report as well. What we are trying to do is make sure the buildings are safe. I think initially a lot of collapse used to happen in Nairobi, but now I think you can see collapse of buildings happening in the counties as well. Then in terms of space within buildings, this is part 7. We talk about the height of the space. We give a minimum in terms of ceiling height, the minimum dimension of a landing, lobby, and passage, So really making sure that there is enough space for people to move around the building. If you have a swimming pool, then one says that if you have a swimming pool, then you must ensure that there is a wall or fence and that a person cannot access that pool from the street. So any stranger coming into your space should not be able to access the swimming pool from the street. And that, I know one case where we had in a school, somebody was able to access the swimming pool and he was found in the morning. He couldn't swim and he was gone. So very important. I mean, those are practical examples of why this should be here. So if you have a gate, then it should have a self-closing and self-latching gate with a provision for locking the gate. So we're not just talking about safety in swimming pools for children and the 12 and under, but also for those grown-ups. Part 8 is looking at floors. So if you're looking at black cotton soil, how do we look at floors, because it affects floors? Black cotton soil ideally should be entirely removed or partially removed, or you have a suspended floor that is erected on the black cotton soil, because obviously you know the qualities of black cotton soil. The requirements also for floors in relation to fire are also set out. 99 is repeated. And then floors should not be slippery. And this, I think we need also to be very careful in the choice of flooring material, floor finish, especially the ceramic tiles. So in terms of the floor finish, they should be approved by the architect and the civil engineer that is supervising that project. Again, the requirement to have professionals on site. Part 11 talks about walls. So you have foundation walls, retaining walls, and load-bearing walls. Ideally, obviously, they should be safe. I think a lot of the times buildings will collapse because the walls were unstable, or the walls have collapsed and therefore the building falls. Other than that, we must ensure that the wall is protected from the elements, especially rain. So contractor, you need to construct a wall that is resistant to penetration of water. And then the argument that hollow blocks cannot be used to construct a substructure foundation wall. Then I'll just finish on the, before the architect comes, I'll finish on part 10. The other one was 9. Part 10 looks at lighting and ventilation. And this is important, especially with now the need for a healthy building. So rooms should have means of lighting and ventilation which enable the room to be used without detriment to the health and safety or cause nuisance for the purpose for which the building is designed. So we are really looking at reducing our energy bills, and therefore sufficient natural lighting should be provided, and artificial lighting should actually be a supplement. So it should not be the main source of your lighting, so that we can reduce as much of electricity bill for investment purposes for your landlord or investor, but also for the health of ourselves, because your eye is better trained for natural lighting as opposed to artificial lighting. And natural ventilation is also recommended, and as much as possible, have the windows open as opposed to AC. All these energy efficiency, environmental design considerations and based on the Energy Act 2019. So requirements for rooms for different uses are described in terms of lighting, heating, and ventilation. And that is really part of what we are looking at in the building code. I'll invite architect Timo to come and take us.
Thank you, Dr. Catherine, for that elaborate presentation. And I'll pick from where you stopped. And basically, the part that she was handling is on architectural issues, on materials and design. And I think I'll pick from there and go to part 10, which talks about grazing and cladding. And in part 10, you'll be talking about safety and installation, safe installation of grazing. You talk about architectural grazing, and cladding is considered as a grazing. And there are crosses, like cross 190, that talks about the responsible architect or civil engineer shall receive from the specialist. I think for the sake of the camera, so I like to see my mask always. I adhere to COVID rules consistently. Let me remove for the sake of the camera. Thank you. That cross 190, the responsible architect or civil engineer shall receive from the specialist manufacturers a warranty that a full thermal movement safety check has been carried out related to unbroken areas of grazing. So it's like checking on the grazing that is being used and that is being used by the designers, and the warranty from the manufacturers. It talks about specifications in terms of size, thermal check requirements, and the grazing thickness for cutting walling is also limited to certain measurement, like 6 millimeter. Then we have got vertical circulation for building, where we have a part now discussing staircases, lifts, and escalators. And there are several crosses on that. And an example is the cross 200 that talks a building which exceeds 1 story in height shall have at least 1 staircase to access the upper floors. So in a building that exceeds more than 1 story, that is 6 meters or even less than 6 meters, because a story can be with a mezzanine, you shall design and have a staircase for use. The same case happens to lifts. Their lifts are limited to certain number of floors, and a building shall have a means of escape in case of any emergency, as may be required by the intended use of the building. You know, we talk about safety, like this auditorium. I know there's one of the courses that talks about auditorium, and in terms of signage, in terms of access, emergency accesses, this code seeks to enhance that. Special staircases, firefighting shall be considered, and a staircase shall always be safe, like having a handrail. Then we would have part 13, or part 12 continues discussing staircases, lifts, and escalators. And you talk about consideration for escalators and firefighting lifts are provided with their measurement and the usage. And then there will be safety considerations and warning signs in regards to lift pits are provided, such that, like there's one of the courses that says that the pit used for the lift shall not be used for anything else, and there shall be access to that, to machine room and pre-rooms that shall be considered. It talks about roofs in part 13. It's 13, yeah. Some of it is written in Roman. So Roman 13, it talks about roofs, and we talk about considerations for design of roofs. We talk about the pitch roofs. We talk about flat roofs. We talk about waterproofing standards. Will also be provided there. Where, and one of the clauses, like 251, where a normally flat roof of boarded or concrete construction is used, it shall have an impervious surface and lead to a fall not less than 1 in 50. No, currently, many of our clients, the consumers, actually, the developers, they have gotten all of a sudden an interest for flat roofs. When I was schooling back in the 90s. We were discouraging flat roofs. I don't know where, that's where architecture comes from. We were discouraging flat roofs in the tropics because of heavy rains. But all of a sudden, there's an awakening, and people are finding flat roofs very good, and they are requesting for the sense of flat roofs. So when we do that, we will be considering waterproofing and the challenges that come with a flat roof. Part 14 will talk about water surfaces, drainage, waste disposal, and stormwater. Basically, this code is for use by designers, engineers, architects, for use by contractors, and even for the consumer, who are the stakeholders, the developers. And talk about clean water harvesting, which is provided, as well as scrubbing that separates grey water from black water. And I was discussing that with Dr. Catherine in the morning. And basically, because of certain soils, the effect of soakage for certain soils like black cotton, you realize that probably this is not being adhered to. So it is not a prescriptive regulation, but more so of a performance-based, where I have got room and I can be able to design for that particular site. He'll talk about provisions of wash closets, and appurtenances are provided with reference to the correct standards. So like when we talk about water, storm water disposal, talk about wastewater disposal, you give guidelines on how this is supposed to be done. And like clause 285 says, the owner of a plot shall provide suitable means of the control and disposal of stormwater, which may run off from the construction works, not only for the developer, even for the intended user or the person that will be using that facility. We should be able to dispose water to the existing drainage, stormwater drainage that are provided by the county governments. You don't just leave your water to flow to your neighbor, and in that way you cause a conflict. So, and there are also guidelines on sewers, design of sewers, and that hard word there called appurtenances are also provided. Of course, we try to simplify terms. I know when we were sitting down with our lawyers, they really wanted some description of some of these terms, so that we do not use a term that is not familiar with the people working in the built environment. There are electrical installations also discussed in the code, and standards for electrical installations are provided. And I have come, after probably sitting down in the committee with engineers, I've come to realize that engineers design with the codes. That's why you'll find Euro codes, you'll find the ones that have been customized to become Kenya Bureau of Standard codes. That's what would be actually be in this code and help us to be able to develop. And I think there was also some interest with the World Bank. And they are very particular on which kind of codes that we are actually using. So, and I believe for those people that want to develop a building within our country and they are not Kenyans, they would be more comfortable to design with the codes that are internationally accepted, like the Euro codes. It will talk about installation of protection against lighting. It's also provided. Lighting is provided, and a switch socket, an insulator, a consumer unit, distribution board, an electric bell, a television outlet or data outlet in a building shall be installed in accordance with KS ISO 21542, standard on building construction, accessibility and usability of the built environment. So it keeps on referring to the codes so that you can be able to design within that. In landscaping, I think this is an upcoming field that now basically we are realizing we need to have sustainable environment. And in landscaping, we are talking of an owner shall provide for soft landscaping area at least 20% of the plot area, which shall have trees, vegetation, and permeable paving surfaces. Construction on an environment reserve is restricted to approval, and setbacks for trees and shrubs are provided for. So probably it's a guide. You don't plant a tree that is going to affect your building just next to your building. Furniture and fixtures shall be incorporated to the landscape design referred to in this part to enhance livability, safety, and convenience. You know, for me, the building code is about safety. And safety in the construction industry, and safety for the user that we are designing and developing for. There will be a part on inspection and maintenance of the built environment, and provision for inspection of a building after every 5 years is provided for. Several inspection types are anticipated. These are visual inspection, full structural and civil inspection, full building condition survey, and full building surfaces inspection, and specialized building investigations, like what our Dr. Kathleen practices. They come in terms of these inspections, and that is provided for in the code. Part 18, you talk about what non-waterborne waste disposal. And it says siting, construction of pit latrines is discussed in detail, and the practice manual for sewerage and sanitation services is referred to. And you'll find across 360, it talks about a latrine and says a latrine and an ablution shall be provided as separate compartments, in which case each compartment shall have minimum dimensions of 1350 millimeter by 750 millimeter, and as a combined compartment having a minimum area of 1.35. We are actually talking about minimum. We leave the designers to be able to design within those parameters. Then cross 19, we'll talk about refuse disposal. And nowadays you find in our community, especially in Nairobi and the surrounding areas, which we call Nairobi bedroom, you find people have got organized way of collecting garbage. And in the code, you talk about every building shall have approved means of refuse storage and disposal within your compound. And details of storage chambers and containers are provided for. Provisions regarding chutes, hoppers, and incinerators are also provided for here. And across 369, a surface room containing an incinerator shall be separated from the remainder of a building by a fire separation that has a fire-resistant rating of at least 2 hours. The design, construction, installation, and alteration of each indoor incinerator shall be in accordance with the Environmental Management and Coordination Act 1999. This is how the building code interacts with other existing laws that are used within the building environment, because the code is not just operating on its own. Part 20, you bring in the issue of facilitation for those people that are specially abled, or people that are differently abled people. And all buildings shall be planned for use by people living with disability. This includes an access with no stairs, steps, curbs, a steep ramp, door, or a doorway that would impede a passage of a wheelchair or access by a person living with this disability. We want to accommodate everyone within our society by the regulations that we are providing for the building, the built environment. A building shall be designed in a manner that facilitates access to the building and to the use of its facilities by a person living with disability in accordance with KS ISO 21542 of 2011, building construction, accessibility, and usability of the built environment. And it will talk about parking spaces for those people living with disability. You talk about the vertical access, how they can be able to access every floor. And it will talk about the special areas like the washroom, the handles that are friendly to people living with disability, and even the width of corridors and doors, so that those people should be able to use any facility. And I believe, myself as an architect, that people that are abled differently should be able to access every part of a building. So vertically, you provide the lift and make sure that all the doors are lifts are somebody using a wheelchair. You can imagine if somebody is not able to access this room, and we are seated here, and one of our stakeholders is living with a disability. Part 21 talks about fire safety and fire installations, and actually we have got an expert on that. That's why we have got Engineer George Karoki to be able to assist us and he'll tell you that every building shall be designed and constructed to ensure that in case of fire, safety evacuation is possible. There is limit to spread of fire. It remains stable, not to endanger other buildings. Like when he went to Dedan Kimathi University yesterday, the first thing he noticed is a signage. And when he got in here, the first thing he noticed, the door is not opening to the outside. This door, and it's I think it's the fire exit door. I checked when I went up here to the washroom to be able to see whether you have got a door at the back, because people should be able to evacuate an area like this one. And the building code will now assist us to be able to guide on how you can design a building to be used for safety, to be used during fire and safe evacuation. A mechanical engineer shall design and certify the firefighting system, provide a firefighting lift, and then also provide a staircase for firefighting, or the rescue staircase. Then provision are made for separating non-combustible walls as well as fire diffusion walls. You talk about our materials, how our materials can resist fire in case of a fire outbreak. Like this room, I know this so nicely done padding. If there is fire here, how long will the padding resist fire within such a space? So we want to look at our spaces that we are actually designing and building, so that we can make them better for use. Thank you for that. Firefighting equipment are provided for a building higher than 6 meters. In a building that is higher than 6 meters shall have firefighting equipment, whatever kind of firefighting equipment. Hydrants, which are for a profession within the compound. There will be the hose reel, the dry eliza for such kind of buildings, fire sprinkler system for special spaces, like when I'm talking about basement parkings, drencher, and water storage tank to be able to provide for water to fight fire in case of a fire outbreak. Part 21 still continues on fire safety and fire installation. And there are two crosses there on that. That is cross 49 and cross 433, and several other crosses. As you can see, it's a whole big part. And still there are more crosses on fire safety and fire installation, like 460. And a building shall be erected on a plot unless the plot has a building shall not be erected on a plot unless the plot has an access for the purposes of firefighting and rescue from the building. You know, even in the slum areas, and I'm happy for what the World Bank has been doing with the KC and the other agencies that are trying to improve our informal settlement. We should be able to provide access for firefighters for such kind of areas. And a building shall have emergency evacuation coordination procedures posted along all floor exits, including and in the form of diagrams displayed in a form that would be easily understood by a person. And I believe that could be missing here. You know, we should have that signage for firefighting, that as you know, where is the escape route? How do I behave in case there is a fire outbreak in the space that I am in? And part 22 will talk about demolition of buildings, and this is about safety. And across 485 says, all demolition works shall be carried out under the supervision of an experienced person for safety. Demolition shall be done by people who understand the structure being demolished under the immediate supervision of a qualified engineer or architect. And somebody yesterday mentioned about demolition and said, we do not just demolish building just because it's an illegal building. There are some buildings that could be demolished so they can give way for a bigger development. And when that demolition is happening, an engineer, an architect, somebody knowledgeable about demolitions shall have to be engaged so that we can have safe environment when we are demolishing, and also probably be able to salvage some of those materials. It always comes to mind what has happened in Nairobi with the railway scrap, which is being demolished, and being part of the ministry that was being charged to demolish. I got to overhear what was happening is they were trying to salvage the materials that are there. So we need professionals involved in demolition of such kind of buildings, probably even to ensure continuity and sustainability. It talks about part 23, disaster risk management. And I'll read across there. A person undertaking a design, planning, preparation, or construction phase in the use or demolition of a project shall take account of general principles of disaster prevention in the performance of those duties during all the stages of the project. And this is to enhance that the persons involved in a construction shall coordinate well for safety and health of everyone involved. The owner has a duty to the designer of a contractor to provide all the pre-construction information. Designs done or modified outside Kenya shall have to comply with this code. Provisions for health and safety during construction, records of health and safety, safe place of work, site good order and security are provided for. Part 23 continues with disaster risk management, and talks about scaffolding and working platforms and how those people that are involved in those areas like demolition, how they behave so they can actually be safe. And just like what our Daktari there talked about this lady that died in the Nairobi University, I was passing along Stanley Hotel, and there were renovations work that were going there. And as I was practically there, and a stone fell all the way from one of the floors and fell on somebody's head on the street, and the person passed on. So these cases are rampant in some areas. Some of them go unnoticed by the media. And we need to talk about disaster risk management, how we do our scaffolding, how we do our working platforms. I've heard of people that are fallen from those heights. You know, heights are dangerous. Somebody will just fall and either become maimed, break your leg, or break your heart or anything. That reminds me, I once had an injured ligament in a construction site, and it's basically because of height. So we really need to take care of our environment, take care of our site, and the contractors that are out there ensure that our heights are safe. Where a height exceeds more than 2 meters, make sure that there is a balustrade that is protecting that height, or there is a railing that you protect that height from somebody from falling. Talks about ladders. Ladders should be safe to use. And basically, you know, it gives you information. Some of this information we may just assume. And you can see a food has made a ladder. The spacing between one step is more than 18 inches, and you cannot be able to climb, and it becomes unsafe. Or even the ladder is missing one of those stepping. I don't know what we call them, because we just call them ladder. From LAN. Thank you for that. So safety measures in regard to excavations are also provided for. That's the issue of holding and ensuring that actually those deep excavations, they are well protected and we can walk around and be safe. I'm almost there. That is part 23, continues on disaster management. And I believe you have read the code. You know, even this presentation is about certain clauses that are talking about the parts that are in there in the building code. It talks about access roads in clause 25, part 25, and access roads, cul-de-sacs, and other private roads. And width of a road or a street shall be guided by the street design manual for urban areas in Kenya. You know, the code will work together with other existing laws. And here for urban designers, they'll be able to guide on street design, and the manual that is used for street design is actually cited here. A private street or a cul-de-sac shall have a footpath at least 2 meters wide. Before I came to this exercise, and I think I discussed the assignment that I have, and somebody said they would like the area where they live in, because when you are walking, probably there's nowhere to walk on as a pedestrian. You know, even those of us that drive, you at one time become a pedestrian, and it's very safe. And there always should be a footpath alongside a street, whether a cul-de-sac or a private street, or even the normal routes that we use, the access roads. The width of an access road shall be at least 6 meters, and the footpath thereon shall be at least 2 meters wide, because roads will go beyond 6 meters. The specification for horizontal and vertical curves are provided. Provision for turning curve are provided. That's for bicycles, bikes, cars, lorries, buses. Just so you can be able to get from a design manual, especially those of us, the architects, we use those design manuals to be able to get such kind of professions. Then, that's it for all the parts. They are actually, that was part 26. There are 24. There are 24. There are 24 parts, and then attached there are schedules. The schedules are tables, and they are useful for design. And this is for occupancy classification, structural Euro codes. And most of these things were in the old code of 1968. And when you have been going through it, we have not threw them aside. Probably you have changed the units. Some of them were in imperial units, and we are converting them to SI units that we use nowadays. And basically retain them so they can be a guide, even when you are building as a contractor, or even you are building as a developer, because the bill is about the developer and the contractor and also the designers. You can be able to cross-check. Now that an architect has given me a passage or a corridor of probably 800 millimeter, is it adequate for me? You can be able to check and probably be able to correct your designer. And there are several things on structural Euro codes. That's the schedules. There are tables on that. There is general classification on bearing capacities, details on walls, exit rate per hour, green building index, sanitary features, sanitation solutions, MBR, MBBR, SBR. And as you leave, ask karaoke, what does MBR or MBBR and SBR mean? So there are all those schedules. And there is a second schedule which is illustrative and in figures with dimensions like garage dimensions, minimum dimensions for garages, turning circles for vehicles, measurement of floor area, that's floor plan area, minimum floor height, grass thickness and dimension limits, lift well, enclosure and dimension. Sometimes even for designers, those things are probably I'm not acquainted with. I can be able to go to the building code and be able to check. And we had agreed with Dr. Kariuki that just like yesterday, you come and give us the way forward. And thank you.
Thank you very much. Yes, Architect Getimo, karibu sana daktari. We have so far enjoyed very elaborate presentations by the two presenters, Daktari and also Architect. Now as a wrap-up on this presentation, then Daktari will now give us the way forward. How do we progress from here? Once now we enter into a very good session of our plenary, then after that, then what is supposed to happen? She'll quickly get into that. Thereafter, then we can have our discussions. Karibu Daktari.
Thank you very much, Madhu and Timo. I think you've heard us, and in a sense, the public participation in this side of Embu has been done, the physical one. But we are also saying this is not the end. NCA is asking if you have any input, and hopefully you've read the whole code, because really what we gave you is really summarized. This is a big document, about 300 and so pages. So we'd urge you to make sure that you read so that you are part of that process, even if you don't speak today. So once we've through with the public participation, then a report will be prepared for the CS. And then there will be also a memorandum to accompany the statement of the CS and to Parliament, because Parliament is key in the formulation of statute. So the CS will then present the building code to the parliamentarian parliamentary committee on delegated legislation, because this is delegated legislation. Then Parliament now will still invite comments from the public. So your role is not ended yet. So after that, now the committee will look at the statement, and this is the parliamentary committee. We look at that statement, and the committee reports to Parliament its decision on the Building Code 2020. So look out for what happens after this, so that you're also still part of the process. And you won't say that the code was prepared and you're not aware. And we would urge you, because you're not many who came today, that you share it with all other contractors so that they are part of the process, or any other professional, the engineers, the architects within this region, and anybody who is an owner of property and wants to build or will build later. This is a document that is from everyone. So finally, we hope then the document will be adopted by Parliament, and the building code then will be gazetted into law. So please own this document. That's why we are here, so that you're part of the process. Thank you very much.
Yeah, many thanks, Daktari. Tumpigie makofi. Asante sana, asante sana. So Daktari tena na Architect Getimu, tunawashukuru sana kwa vile ambavyo mmeweza kutujulisha mengi kuhusu the building code. Now, ladies and gentlemen, without wasting a lot of time, we appreciate that at least we've managed so far to save a bit on time. I would like to now open this conversation in a way that we can now receive your views regarding the presentation, and these views are from the plenary. We came here because we want to add our voice to this conversation. So karibuni sana. I would like to hear the issues that would come from your end. Now, the beauty of this process is that it's not ending here. We still have a window to present our views. There are those who would like to go and reread the document thereafter. So you can go interact with the document. As you rightly said, it's a huge document. You can make your submissions to the authority through the various social media handles, which are official that we have. We receive a lot of feedback from the general public on the Facebook. We are receiving a lot of feedback on our YouTube channels. We have emails that are open. You can even go on LinkedIn. All these are platforms available for the general public to engage with the authority, and more specifically on this subject matter of today. So don't feel like it's too late. You still have an opportunity to tell us what you'd like to see in this building code, and we'll really appreciate. We consider that no one of us can claim to be very knowledgeable and that whatever is presented here is final. It's actually work in progress. That's why it's called a draft. Number two, even as we make our submissions here, there are those who may not really want to voice, their issues. So you want to write down an item. So you can write it. It will still make its way here. And then we have able directors here, and again, the committee members who will be looking at the issues that we are raising. So we have our directors, we have the team. These are the people who will be looking at the issues that we bring forward, and then we'll attempt to address some of them. Some of them, again, could just be for value addition, and they'll still be incorporated in the final document if the committee deems that fit. So with those few remarks, I welcome comments from the plenary. I know our team is ready to give you the mic. Yes. Yeah, you introduce yourself, you say where you're coming from for purposes of recording.
Good afternoon, everyone. Much as I may want to comment on the code, I may not be able to. And I remember having a private conversation with you on the provision of the summarized form of the code. so that I can possibly see it, read it, and digest whatever is inside. So it's really my request that I have those notes so that. I'm Jiro Joka, Archival Engineering Services, based here in Embu. So my request is that we get the notes, and after that, I think I should be able to comment after I've gone through them. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Njiro Njoka. I know you had earlier requested that we share with the plenary a popular version of what we are trying to educate the public about. So we can do that. We'll find a mechanism also of allowing our contractors to actually have this version, and if they have comments, to share with us. We have so many actually contractors, and that's in order. Any other comment? And for contractors, another thing that you need to note, I hope you made your registration properly, because this is also a CPD earning event, because you're coming here to share your knowledge. You've left your work, you've left a lot of other things that you can do to come and be part of improving the kind of a version of document we have today. So make sure that your registration details are in order, so that the team that will be dealing with the CPD register can then appropriately take notice of your participation. Any other issue? Go on. The mic.
Good afternoon, everyone.
Good afternoon.
My name is Mercy Wangare from Mokasi Builders. We're based in Embu. Thank you, NCA, for coming here to enlighten us on the draft building code. Thank you for the summarized version. We're going to see how we can read the full version now. But what I liked about it is that it's not as prescriptive as what we've had before. And it's very real. It touches on real issues like floors being slippery, people falling from heights. These are real issues that you actually come into contact with while on site and everywhere. So thank you for the presentation.
Thank you very much, Wangari. Mokasi Builders, you said? Okay, thank you very much. That's a good feedback. And I think it's a part on the back of the team that has worked on this document. Thank you. Any other view? Kama tunagoja view. Okay, good.
Okay. Good afternoon. My name is Architect Haron Karuga. I work with the county government of Kirinyaga. My issue is coming from my perspective as an architect, where I would like to raise this question to the board here, or to the authority. We have a scenario, I'm not sure whether it's addressed in the code, about the frontage, the setbacks, and especially this is a problem we have been encountering in some of the counties as we try to design. We have, for example, areas where we have subdivisions of land that are 40 by 80, you have 30 by 60, and then you have the regulations for those counties where they say you have to give a setback. My question would lie, how are we going to reconcile the two, the subdivisions of land and how the building code is supposed to be implemented on in practice? Thank you.
Yeah, that's a good question also from architect. Is there any other question before I give over the mic to our director, Waweru, who can try to talk to that issue of planning and again also the code. What are the issues around planning and again also the stipulations of the code. I think this was a good conversation yesterday and director also tried to talk to it and it's a good thing it's coming up again today. Anything else? Director Waweru, kindly.
Thank you. First of all, good afternoon, all of you. I think it's the first time you're hearing my voice today. May I ask those who are sat behind these columns placed here by engineers to move to the sides where we can see them. If I can't see you, can't see me, then we have line of sight issues here. Just so that we are all in contact, even if not physical contact exactly. Thank you. I'd hope that the code will ban an auditorium designed like this where you have columns katikati. It's not ideal. It's not dangerous, but it's not ideal. My name is Waweru Gadesha. I'm an architect, and I represent Architectural Association of Kenya on the board. That is how I'm a director of NCA. Those are good questions from my colleague, architect Karuga, you said, from my county government of Kirinyaga. Your questions are in the area of development control. And of course, the building code we're looking at is an instrument of development control. It is at a perhaps smaller scale than land use planning, land use policy, and so on and so forth. All of that is development control, including subdivision, the planning matters that we know, subdivision, amalgamation, change of use, extension of use, etc., etc. And they're all a function of land, everything from how you hold land, what you can do with it, etc., etc. The reason why I'm giving that background is because the question you're asking is not a question that may be answered in a building code. Essentially, you are discussing the matter of plot sizes, minimum plot sizes, and the usage to which a piece of land remains economical. Is appropriate for the use that is designated to it, and so on and so forth. You're an architect, I'm an architect, and so we live in that same world. Frontages and setbacks are part of planning policy, and they are created as part of a zoning regime by the local planning authority. In your case, it will be the county government of Kirinyaga. That is where the planning should be done. They will say that in this area here, we want minimum plot size this here. It is not guesswork. We want a setback of this much. It's not guesswork, and so on and so forth. It can't be guesswork because we're doing all of these things so that we can encourage development, we can encourage sustainable, habitable, optimal development. The problem, of course, is not a new one and it's not unique to Kirinyaga. If you talk to somebody in Embu, if you talk to somebody in Nairobi, in Machakos, wherever it is, it's a problem we have in this country. I'm sure Dr. Kariuki, who's in the School of Real Estate and Construction Management, will also have something to say there because, as she said, she's in maintenance and architects and planners and surveyors turn up with engineers, they do what they're doing and then they run away after 2 years. And then she's got life cycle problems to deal with for 25 years. The cure to what you're asking is in planning and how it is done. It is in the permitted minimum size of a plot, and that is where the answer would lie. We have physical planning regulations that come under the Land Use and Planning Act. There's physical planning handbook, you know that. Inside there, you will find some of those answers. But essentially, it is we, the professionals, that must guide the politicians and must guide them correctly. Sometimes some politicians are not guidable, you know what I'm saying? But we must remain true to cause. You cannot say you have a setback of 6 meters and you have, 40 by 40 or whatever it is. Then the land stops being economical and we produce the awkward built environment character that we see out there. 2 more points. Without being very hard-hitting, let me say we have a problem of somebody called a surveyor. A surveyor in this country, or in some instances, seems to be able to work independent of any land use imperatives, seems to be able to execute, in fact, they don't really have a right to subdivide, but they're the ones who subdivide. And so you find a plot that has not been subject of any larger planning considerations, and then you're asked to put a building on it, and usually that is fait accompli, especially in non-urban areas. I have seen many subdivisions that you would not be happy to, you'd not be happy to be part of as a professional, as an owner, etc., etc. A long time ago, when I was a younger architect, I'm still young, but I was younger once, I remember looking at, a friend of mine had bought some land in Mlolongo, which even then was a special planning area. The plots had been subdivided into parallelograms, huge piece of land, and they're all parallelograms. So on one side you have an acute angle, the opposite side acute angle, and then the other side you have an obtuse angle. And then hapa katikati wanaachiwa futi tatu, mtu asipite hapo asiguse along the long length, and the road to the front and to the back was 5 meters, if that, and it's a huge area. There's no infrastructural services, no amenity, no nothing. And so my friend called me and asked me, he's bought the plot already, I'm an architect, nichore kitu nieke hapa. What did I do? He's my friend from high school. You've made an investment, you have a right to a return. I told him, what you do, you walk around this area, other people have built, go and find who is drawing for them, what they are building, then improve it slightly. So what he did is, people are putting 20 rooms, 10 rooms this side, 10 rooms this side, corridor, chore, and everything at the end. You know the type of building I'm talking about. No setback, nothing. You put up what other people are putting up, get approval how they get it. For me as an architect, I will not put my name on anything there. I cannot help you. I can help you as a friend because I am not development control. For you to extract a return on your investment, you then have to do what other people are doing. And that became my advice to him, and I had to walk away simply because of that problem created at that level there. Yeah? So there's a subdivision which is not optimized, which does not respect principles of land use and utility and so on and so forth. It's a real challenge, but the place at which we need to tackle that is in our planning departments, because constitutionally the planning unit where plans are especially at this level made and implemented is the county government. Thank you. Have I answered you? Yeah.
Thank you so much, Director Waweru. You have properly answered our architects, and the good thing is that both of you are in the same line. So I think the conversation is very much aligned. Ladies and gentlemen, I'm inviting more views from the plenary. Kwa wale ambao wamekuja wamechelewa kidogo, tunawakaribisha sana. It's a great honor as an authority that we are able to host you. Despite your late arrival, we believe that the documentation that was presented today will be made available to you. And we have said we still have an opportunity to make our views known by way of using one of the official channels of communication at the National Construction Authority, and your voice will be recorded. I'm inviting more views. Yes, there's a view from Engineer Sango.
Thank you very much. Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Peter Musango, as the team leader has said. I represent the Roads and Civil Engineering Contractors Association, and I'm also in the construction industry. I'm a civil engineer by profession. I want to thank the Ministry of Public Works and NCA, through NCA, because of having taken this initiative to come up with this, can I call it the new building code, which is an improvement of the one we had since 1968. The fact that this new code, or the draft, is more towards performance-oriented code, other than prescriptive, like the original one, I think it is very, very positive for the professionals and everyone else involved in the building environment. There are very many examples. First of all, we all know that technology is changing. In the last, say, 5 years, there are so many technological advancements that have happened across the world. Some of them are reaching our shores now. Others probably will be reaching in the very near future. We also know there are also technologies developed here in Kenya, which, if this code goes through, will give an opportunity to improve the way we do our construction, safety, serviceability of what we build, and I think it is going to be positive for everyone, the builders and the consumers of what we build. If you look at the materials aspect and services offered in the built environment, I think I can quote an example of this house that is coming up, a tall building coming up along Ojijo Road in Nairobi. I think it is owned by the Ministry of Public Works, opposite Parklands Sports Club. I think it's Kenya Institute of Building Technology. My first time to see that enclosure with the project signboard, President Moi was the president of Kenya. That is when the project commenced, if I'm not mistaken. Now, President Kibaki came and construction was going on. And now I've seen it's more or less completed. They are doing some final touches here and there. So you can imagine the technology we had when President Moi was the leader. For sure, we didn't have the Wi-Fi's that we are using now, and WhatsApp, fiber optic cable had not come. There were solar applications, yes, but very limited in nature. In fact, a lot of installations where solar was involved was the off-grid areas. We all know that there has been a leap in technology regarding telecommunications. So the services perhaps that were designed for that house at that time may be different from what is being, what is relevant for us now. So that construction has taken long. It is within our imagination to imagine that the people involved may have wanted to change the technology as time went by. This new code, allows that kind of change as the people involved in the development continue. I also want to point out that it offers a very big opportunity for the professionals, because, for example, there's a provision for NCA to inspect construction work, to take action. And one of the key areas I would expect NCA to do is to ensure its professionals who are in charge of that development. There's room for everyone. There's room for the architects, the engineers, the technicians, the masons. Everyone has their own place. But it's not right to have a building being designed by a structural engineer in quotes when that person is actually not qualified to do that work. So that will, and some of those are foreigners, very unfortunately. There are people who come here, and because they are from overseas, some of us assume that they have come because they are better qualified than us, which a lot of times is not the case. So there is that good aspect where our jobs as construction personnel or people involved in the built environment will be appreciated, and there will be enough for everyone. I want also to encourage all of us to read the complete document, give proposals. I'm still reading deeper and deeper. Sometimes you read once and you don't get everything right the first time. In fact, this morning, I was flipping through some of the clauses, and interestingly, I found there is a requirement during construction of a building that the contractor is supposed to provide for sanitation, which is very important, and it's a must, and then a kitchen. So I was wondering whether we should change the word kitchen to a wider, meaning, because we don't want to introduce conflict at the site where the contractor will be stopped from working because he has not provided a kitchen, and yet maybe he has outside catering arrangements. So I'm going to write about it and others. So I also encourage all of us to look at those areas, and let's give some feedback to the committee, so that in the wisdom of the CS, if it is okay, then we can have a very good code. Thank you very much.
Yeah, thank you very much, Bwana Msango. Those are good contributions. I request that you also give us something in the form of a write-up, so that those views can also be considered by the larger working committee. Team, anyone else who want to make a submission? Yes.
Thank you very much for giving me this second opportunity to stand before you. Mine is really a concern based on the comment of Team Linda and Dr. Catherine. Madam Catherine told us that when she came, she noticed some defects. When the architect was presenting, he talked about these columns in a hall. What are these standards we are talking about? Has this hall been built to the standards that we are talking about? And if not, what are the remedies? Thank you.
Thank you. My comment with regard to the columns, I think, is separate from Dr. Karioki's comment on the defects that she saw. I think she saw some cracks or something, and even those, I don't know if she mentioned or she was suggesting that they're structural or dangerous, but I'll address the comments with regard to the columns. Mine was really a design comment, not a health and safety concern. And that is why I started by saying those who are behind the columns, Masonge kando hivi, because in an auditorium you should have clear lines of sight. Those of us up here and those of you behind there, okay? So you notice in this auditorium, they don't have a screen behind us simply because of what the columns are doing. Let me be clear, I did not speak about the columns as a function of the safety of the structure or its soundness, okay? Mine was a design comment, because I was joking with my engineer colleague here and Peter there. This is what happens when you leave engineers to a design space. We had been joking earlier. But you understand what I'm saying. You shouldn't really have columns in this manner here. Chair, if you'll allow me, session chair, I can ask a question also. I'm also in construction like yourselves. Our jobs at NCA are fairly temporary. My permanent life is an architect with an office on Chiromo Lane. Peter, my office is on the junction. The building I'm talking about is on the junction of Ojiji Road and Chiromo Lane. My office is on Chiromo Lane. I've been there for over 20 years, so I see that site every day. And you're right. I think it's from the late 90s. I think the first contractor was Franvi. And there are many things we as persons in construction should have to say about that sort of thing. There are hard questions that public works should have to answer, from resource utilization to a facility that was designed, and you know, it's an over 20-year-old design, over 25 years old design. Is it still appropriate? And many, many, many questions along those lines. I shudder to think at I shudder at the final account. What will the final account of that project be? It'll probably be like that of a building that should be 5 times what we're getting there in use of money. And there are many questions. They can't be cured by code and other things, but they should cause us to look at ourselves very critically. And there are projects like that all over this country. Anyway, Chair, the question that I wanted to ask is, and especially from those who have not spoken today, I know we have quite a few contractors, we have site supervisors, people who are people on the ground, people who interact with buildings day to day. What challenges have you found or have you experienced in application of the current code? Let's set aside building the draft building code for now. As a contractor, as somebody who interacts with day-to-day on the ground matters, what challenges have you found in application of the current code, in its use? Do contractors, do site agents, site supervisors, even skilled workers on site, do they refer to the code in your daily tasks, day to day, week to week, month to month? Do you actually refer to the code? Do you have the code in Embu? Do you have the code? Do you use it? I'm seeing somebody shaking his head. I hope he will speak after I speak. Because I think that is also part of our problem. And as I said, I'm a practitioner also. I live outside there. Mkiniona hapa ni hii shati tu nimevaa leo asubuhi. By Monday, I'll be the other side. A big challenge we have in this country as Kenyans, as persons in construction, as those of us here, is perhaps that we do not apply our hearts and minds to these documents that we create. We have an existing code. It's not perfect for a fact, but any building in Kenya has been produced by that code. Its deficiencies are there. I've had to use that and then combine with knowledge from elsewhere to produce a modern building in the 21st century. But that's if you're applying your heart and mind to the task ahead of you. I'm saying that because we are now discussing a draft code that wants to take us forward, catapult us into a better built and natural environments. We've even included aspects of landscape architecture in this document. If we do not take it to heart, if we do not apply our hearts and minds to this document, then the result will be the same. Because, forgive me if I use monkeys, but if you take monkeys from this forest, Karura forest, and put them in Aberdare forest, the thing that you've changed there is the trees. But the monkeys, the way they behaved in Karura forest, you've now taken them to a bigger forest called Aberdare, it'll be the same. So I'm interested in those perspectives because we've not spoken before. What is your experience with even the current code? Is it that it's defective? Is it that we don't use it? How can we breathe life into this document? How can we apply ourselves, hearts and minds, so that before you do anything, you have checked the code? If I drive through Embu, and I've been to Embu many times, and I could speak about Nairobi, I could speak about Limuru, where I'm from. I drive around, I look at the buildings, and I can tell hapa, code iko pande moja, what is going on in buildings is on the other side. Anyway, my friend, you are sharing.
Thank you, Bwana Director. Kizungu yangu ni kidogo sana. Naweza kuongea kwa Kiswahili. Kwa sababu Kizungu na Kiswahili zote ni national language. Katika Embu, mimi niko jirani hapa pale panaitwa Chuka. Na Embu ni majirani wetu, hata Consultants, hata Mr. Koril ndiye anatujua. We don't have any code. Like myself, I'm a supervisor in a building and also a contractor. Giving an example, peko mjengo nimejenga ya retaining wall, a 45-degree retaining wall. I think Mr. Korilu unajua pale iko hapa Cooperative Bank ukiwa Chuka. Peko nyumba nilikuja nikaonyeshwa ilikuwa imekatika katikati. Na nikakuja nikaitwa nijenge retaining wall. Sasa hata naweza tuma Mr. Korilu aenda akaangalia, lakini najua mahali iko. Hapo Cooperative Bank ile mjengo uko hapo opposite. Unajua Mr. Korilu. Sasa some of us, the challenge we have, hakuna code. And most of the supervisors and also the masonry works, they don't even go for vocationals nini. They don't go. Mtu alianza kuchapa simiti kutoka hapo 1 year, anaanza kuwekelea mawe. 3 years to come is a contractor. Na hakuna mali yoyote na ajui codes za nini na regulations za nini. So that is what is affecting us. Kwa sababu ukienda kuuliza mtu anakuambia wewe ulikuwa ukifanya na ministry utanipisha pesa mingi, niko na mtu yangu. Akianza mjengo kuja kufika walling, unaona Mr. Korila anakuja anapiga makasi. Anaenda, akienda kutoka hapo anakuja ana paint ile nini. Kesho anaendelea tu. Unakuja unamuuliza sasa, kwa nini sasa mjengo hizi niliona napiga? Watu wanakuja kukula tu. So naona they are just spoiling your names because of you don't follow the institution ile responsible. They don't follow and they don't criticize wewe umesomea wapi, umeko nani, vitu namna hiyo. Hizo ndio challenges mostly zina affect mafundi, developers, kwa sababu developer anataka kupeana pesa kidogo, anapenda pesa, apendi kazi. Na akikupea kazi anaanza kukuambia hapa fanya, hapa fanya, hapa fanya. Hiyo ndio na the challenges, most of the challenges sana kubwa sana inatupatia nini. So you will find a way vile tunaweza kusubtract hawa na hawa, tunaweka katika klasi. Na ukimpata kwa field unamwambia barua yako iko wapi? Hakuna. Haya, wewe unaenda na yeye. Wewe barua yako iko wapi? Iko. Huyo anaendelea na kujenga. Thank you very much.
Asanti, kuna maswali ambayo yameulizwa na director, na ningeomba ya kwamba tuchangie kidogo kwa sababu now this is a practice. So kama kuna mwingine naambia kuna mwingine pale. Asante sana. Asante.
NCA na wale ambao wamesidiki kwenye huu mkutano ya leo ya kuchangia na kuarifiwa yale ambayo yanatokea kwa hii huduma ya ujenzi. Hamjamboni adhuri. Mimi naitwa Anthony from Ronyenjes, Embu, na nimefurahia kushiriki kwa huu mkutano. Mimi ni fundi pia na ni site supervisor. Nimesikia kama architect ameuliza swali ni yapi changamoto ambazo tunakumbana nacho na huko nje wakati tunajenga. Yale tunakutana nayo ni mingi, ni changamoto mingi zaidi. Singine umepewa kazi, singine umepokonywa. Haya, kwa hizi building codes sinaanzia wapi? Haya, wale ambao wamepitia kwa shule walisoma hizo building codes za 1968. Kuna British codes, kuna ni mingi. Na ndizo zinatundrive kwa kujenga. Wacha nitumie neno either, sababu asitumiki sana, ni vile tunaiga. Kama mimi tuseme for example, mimi ni foodie. Architect umenichorea nyumba, umechora nyumba. Ninajua wewe ndiwe unastahili kukuja kwa site, upime nyumba, ukue time to time supervising the structure. Yangu nami ni supervisor, wa kuangalia vile site inaenda hii na inakaa hivi. Kuna safetyness inafuatiliwa, kuna kila area inafuatiliwa. Kuna mwingine supervisor pande ya either ni pande ya kwa stores, hiyo yote mnaijua. Lakini sinda iko hivi. Architect umechora nyumba, umeileta kwa ground, umeniacha wewe umeenda sako. Aya, the developer naye amekuja kwa site, sababu anastahili kuwa akikuja time to time kuangalia mjengo yake na hawezi kasuiliwa. Lakini sinda architect ulikuwako kwa ground, tukifanya excavation ukaipitisha ukasema tuko sawa, sile material tunatumia iko sawa, wewe ukaenda Nairobi ama kwingine kuchukua kazi ingine huko. Sasa developer amekuja naye aseme pengine alikuwa amechukua loan na anaona ile mambo umemchorea all the details, hata ifuata, atafanya shortcut. Sasa atafute mtu mwingine akuje sasa aanze sasa ku reduce the cost of structure. Tuseme ulikuwa umempea chuma ikorogwe na class D ama class 20, yeye akuje a reduce. Wewe ukiwa Nairobi hautajua kama kuna kitu ilipandilika. So ni mbinu zipi ambazo kama NCAs na all the body in building construction regulations, ni vipi mtafanya ili kile ambacho kimechorwa na kile kiko kwa ramani kiwe ndicho kinafuatiliwa kwa ujenzi mpaka the structure iise. Sababu some failures inakujanga hivyo. Wewe ulichora nyumba vizuri sana, ukapeana details, chuma inastahili kutumiwa hii, simiti inastahili kutumiwa hii, all the materials. Lakini wewe kaenda, kisha kumekuja mapandiliko na mwenyewe. Hiyo ni challenge moja. Jambo lingine ni tuseme ni contractor A alikuwa amepewa kazi. Aya, wapelekane kidogo tu kwa ground floor ama waanje kwa structure. Akifika nusu akutane na contractor B jioni yuko pengine kwa mbaa. Seme sasa hiyo nyumba inakukura pesa mingi sana. Huyo jamaa anakujengea ana misuse your resource. Pengine ni jina yako ilikuwa pale kwa notice board kama kama contractor or site supervisor whichever. Lakini sasa kumekuja mapandiliko, lakini kwa ofisi, sababu umenjaza kila form kwa NCA, inajua ati ni contractor B ndiye yako kwa ile site. Lakini all of a sudden kumekuja contractor C na without your knowledge. So mutasaidia vipi kwa yale hayo all those challenges, tutasaidia namna gani huko? Sababu tunakutananga na maneno mingi zaidi. Umefanya kazi haya, ikifika Jumamosi simu zimesima, hakuna pesa. Watu wale ulikuwa unazimamia sasa karibu wakukule wakuja kwako nyumbani usiku kama wakora. Wakumese, Jumamosi imefika, pesa simu zimesima. All those challenges ndizo tunakutananga nazo kama site supervisors, mafundi na contractors. Wako hapa wengi, unakuta contractor anasima simu Jumamosi. Aya, unategemewa na hao wengine mavijana walipe. All those challenges ni vipi, ni mbinu zipi ambazo mutatumia ili kungafa the building cons? Sababu building cons ni wind inanikava hata mimi munjenzi huko. So ili ni changamoto. Nimeenda forum mingi sana, unasikia kuna kwingine unasikia kuna njia ambazo ninaweza tumia ili nilipo pesa yangu. Lakini unakuta ile saa utatumia na ile pesa una claim muda ni costly than ile pesa una claim. Wewe unafutilia hiyo mbali. So those hizo changamoto ni mingi zaidi. Haya, kwa shule, sababu hii ni kitu sasa inakuja. Kwa shule kwa sasa wanatumia those are cons. Here 1968. Saa hii ni vijana wandogo hawa, dika kidogo. Sisi ni wasee, tunaondoka. So ikiwa kunaweza kuwa na uhamasisho wa wale ambao wanakuja kwa ujenzi, wawe wakitoka shule wanajua ni nini wanakuja kufanya nje, ni watakuwa, because those building codes are there in their books, lakini wakuwa wakiletwa hata kwa hizi forums ili wachanuke akili, wajue mahali wanaenda. Tunaonanga kuna hii inaitwa teaching practice. Hata askari tunaona akitoka training, akiwa training anapelekangwa nje kidogo akamate mtu, sasa ashike mtu hivi, aingishe kwa station, astaki, aandike report kwa ombi. So na hawa nao students wale ambao wako shule, wale wanafanya engineering, building construction engineering, electrical engineering, hayo yote, hizo zote taaluma, watajua vipi zile changamoto watakutana nacho nje, na atashughulikiwa vipi ili asiogope kukua fundi. Wacha nitumie hiyo jina. So ni mingi sana changamoto. Okay, mzee wangu hapa amesema kitu. Kuna watu walijua kufanya kazi na wako na experience kubwa zaidi hata kusinda yule amefanya hata diploma. Na elimu ni bora sana. Lakini kuna mtu alisaliwa orobasanda na kakuta the institution haimkubali kusoma sababu pengine ya kukosa karo, wasasi ametoka kwa nyumba ambazo ni maskini, lakini akatokea hivi town. Akaenda akajiingiza kwa mjengo, akajiingiza kwa welding, akajiingiza tu huko kwa hizo taaluma. Akanjua kufanya kazi sababu tunasemanga manke si manke do. Aya, akaona, akajua, akafanya. Na anafanya kitu zaidi sana. Hata wale wamejenga hii nyumba, nina hakika kitu kama wale walikuwa wameajiriwa hapa, wengi wao hawakuingia hata kwa darasa ya ufundi. Sina wameconstruct kitu mzuri. Unakuta mtu anafanya kitu ambaye hata wewe ulikuwa shule unacharijiwa. So hiyo nayo ijulikane vizuri. Tunajua kila fundi anastahili kuwa registered. Na mukaleta registration. Kila fundi awe registered. Kila supervisor awe registered. Kila contractor awe registered. So ilikuwa ni njia ya kwanza mjue Kenya yote kwa database ya NCA tayari mmejua mna mafundi wangapi. Mna site supervisor wangapi. Na uwezi kuwa site supervisor bila kukua na kujua ni nini wewe ni site supervisor aina gani. Sababu umejua kujenga. So hiyo yote imefanyika na inaendelea kufanyika. Kwa hivyo mimi ningeomba NCA muend hii kitu na hizi kondi mtuletee tukue nazo tusome, ili tukikutwa na maneno hautastakiwa kama NCA, sababu tayari kuna awareness ati sheria za ujenzi zinapandilika. Kama sasa tulikuwa tunatumia chuma ya R, hiyo tulimalizana nayo kitambo. Notanerezi mahali inahitajika. Tukakuja kwa Y, hiyo imeisha. Tuko kwa deformed. Pengine kutakuja ingine. So hii awareness ya mambo vile inapandilika, kama sasa kwa manduka uwezi kakuta Y, notanerezi only stock. Ile ambayo mwenyewe hawezi kachoma sababu ni chuma. So imekutwa na D. Pengine kuna wakati itafika hata kumefanywa introduction ya overlapping. Hii overlap. Sidio? So ni mapandiliko. Mimi yangu ni kuhimiza hivi. Sababu sisi tunaendelea na ujenzi na tunakutwa na maneno mpya. Zamani tulikuwa tunakimbia mbio kupeleka huduma. Kukakuja simu ile ya ilikuwa inaitwa ya rununu ama ilikuwa inaitwa nini ile ya waya. Kumekuja sasa hii mobile. Pengine sasa kumekuja hizi za internet. So hii awareness mkuwe mkitufanya zaidi sana sana wale ambao wako shule, ili wakitokea wasistuliwe na yale yanatendeka nje. Hiyo ndio ingekuwa changio langu, na nishukuru NCA kwa mnaendelea kufanya hivyo, sababu nimeenda kwa forum mingi zaidi na I'm aware, na nitaendelea kujulishwa na mwingine ataendelea. Asante sana, na kama sisi mafundi tushughulikiwe na NCA, tulindwe na NCA kwa yale tunakumbana na yao nje, na mtuweke maanani kwamba ni sisi tunafanya ile kazi ngumu zaidi ya kumfanya nyinyi mkue hapo mlio. Asanteni sana, nimetumia muda wenu mwingi, muniwieni radhi. Asante.
Anthony from Ronyanges. Nimeshukuru sana. And mzee mwenzangu hapa. Oh, you want to speak again? Nataka kuongezea? Haya.
Asante sana bwana director. Najua huwezi kwenda kwa mjomba wako bila mamako. Na kusema hivyo ni kujua peko wazazi wetu wengine wanatukosea. Mmoja tunaanza na consultant, na mwingine ni architect. Wengine na mimi nishaona. Wengine anakuja anaandika kibao yake, mimi ni Omondi ama mimi ni nani architect. Mimi ni consultant fulani. Alafu mimi ni supervisor ama mimi ni contractor. Alafu najiandika hapo. Nitajenga hiyo site from the ground, foundation nimalize, nikuje walling, nikuje nini, mpaka roofing, na mmoja wao sitamuona hivi. Ni kweli? Sasa ukiuliza sasa na huyu architect na huyu consultant, na naona jina yake hapa, yeye anakaaji? Hata siku moja hawezi kuja kuniambia wewe contractor umekosea hapa, ama kuja ambia supervisor wangu hapa si hujaenda vizuri, alafu hata mimi nijue makosa yangu. Sasa nikipatikana na NCA naambia wewe you are not qualified, na nimefanya makosa hayo kwa sababu wazazi wangu hawako. Sasa hapo peko na akina Mr. Njiro sa. Please. Njiro is there, is a consultant. Please fanyeni tu, chukueni muda hata mkiwa na kazi mingi sana, lakini mchukue muda tu ukiwa ni saidi na ninafanya na wewe. Ukuje unione, unicorrect kwa sababu ile elimu unayo si mimi niko nayo. Thank you.
Asante sana, directors, and also our two colleagues who are making their submissions. Tunashukuru sana mzee Njiro na mzee baba yangu hapa kwa hayo mambo mazuri ambayo mumeyasema. Now, as an authority, there are a raft of measures. Kuna mambo mengi ambayo tunayafanya to ensure, especially this one particular issue that you have alluded to. We have a program where we are continuously increasing our database by way of trying to identify workers. Now, our workers, they are not necessarily people who went to school, but people who are now competent enough to execute projects based on their long experience on construction sites. We currently have a very good partnership where hata juzi tumekuwa hapa Makueni, I think 2 weeks ago tulikuwa pale Kwale, and we are working closely with an institution called NITA. Kwa wale ambao tume-identify, there are 2 types of accreditation at NCA. One is what we call the provisional accreditation, ya kwamba tumekuja kwa site, tumekuona ya kwamba you are actively engaged on construction site, hauna makaratasi yoyote ya kuonyeshana ya kwamba ulisoma, but we have found you on construction site, and it is very important for us to form that kind of a database. Who is on the site? Number 2, we move on to who has the skill that has been assessed. So we are now then moving after provisional accreditation kwa wale ambao they are ready to do grade tests. We are already working with NITA. Unafanyiwa grade test, unaanza ya ile ya chini sana, grade test 3. Ukipita ile sasa, we give you now full accreditation. Na hiyo ni kitu mzuri sana kwa sababu utajitambulisha ya kwamba mimi am a bona fide member in the construction industry. You can be engaged in a slightly more professional way kuliko vile mambo yalivyo hivi sasa. But you see also, this is a partnership. You also have to encourage those you are working closely with. Kuna mafundi wengi wako pale. Mara mingi unapata tunakuja kwa site, tunataka kutambulisha mafundi, sijui ni kwa nini wakati mwingine wanaogopa. The directors are seated here. Currently, that process of accreditation, whether provisional or even full accreditation, is free. Wakati mwingine imekuwa 1,000, wakati mwingine inakuwa 2,000 for supervisors, running for about 2 years. But for now, that process is free. But even when we have made it free, unapata kuna mafundi wengine, tukikuja site wanapotea. Sijui ni kwa nini. So that's an area where you also need to sensitize your colleagues, waambie they come on board. Now, there's another issue that you have alluded to. Now, having the competencies alone is not enough, because also you need to be seized with the new issues. What are the emerging issues? Kwa sababu hata kama unaweza jenga, you don't stop first to ask yourself, kuna mambo mengine mapi ambayo yanakuja. Now, we have a program for workers. And happily, next week tuko hapa kwenu. We are coming to train contractors. We are coming here to train workers. In fact, it's the first time we are rolling out venue-based training after COVID. Na tunaanza na hapa kwenu. So around Wednesday and Thursday, tutakuwa hapa Embu. So we are continuously having what we call the CPD and the CTD trainings, ambapo tunakuja, tunawafundisha kama ni workers, the new issues which are arising from the building code, new technologies that are coming up. So we are continually updating the workers in the industry, contractors, supervisors on emerging issues. And we are therefore inviting you and welcoming you. I know Coril, maybe you'll talk about that tutakapokuwa tunakaribia kufunga, so that you can welcome them to our services, and again also you tell them about the trainings which will be forthcoming. So sitaki kusema mengi sana. There is a lot that is happening in that sphere of training, but I would invite you to partner with us so that we can also support you. Mzee, baba yangu, asante sana.
Thank you very much. Asante sana wenye tumeuliza maswali na make contribution. Nafikiri as we go towards closing, I've decided wacha ni make my comments, and then my colleague will also, as he's making his comments, anaweza kutufungia pia. So I think it's a good idea. So my comments is that first, nimesikiza what the contributors have said, and I think those are very, very good comments and valid, and hiyo itatu guide as we move forward, including the specific comments from the document that, as Musango has said, when you read, you see something else every time. Na yeye amesoma hiyo document, na pia akisoma tena anapata mambo ingine tena baadaye. ama tofauti vile alikuwa ameiona kwanza. So ni vizuri tuisome because maybe Msango, that is one of the areas that we need to focus on, because we are saying the document is based on performance based, and really, like the case you bring in the kitchen is what is the level, what is the measure of performance? Is it taking lunch? If it's taking lunch, then there's a wide scenario if that is a performance, but it is a good contribution. In terms of the others, of course, unless you read, kama hujasoma hiyo document, huwezi jua nini kizuri ndani yake na nini kibaya ndani yake, ama ambaye inatakiwa kubadilishwa. Ni kama vile ningeuliza tu hapa, nani amesoma BBI? Who has read BBI here? Na yet, we all have opinion about BBI. Sisi wote tuko na opinion ati hii BBI imekuja kutumaliza, mwingine BBI imekuja kutuongezea. We all have opinion kulingana na nani tunamusikiza ama nani tunampenda. So why don't we read the document, tujisomee, tuone ni nini mzuri, nini tungependa ibadilishwe, and then we move, we help this country, because you can see, if the last document was done in 1968, so you can imagine, if that is a trend, when is the next one going to be done? Many will not be around the industry at that time. So why don't we get a good document? Na hizi document tunatengeza sio kama Biblia. Biblia hatuwezi anza correct Biblia sahi. Kwa maana we believe what was written there, of course the hand that wrote could not make mistakes. But hii yetu tunatengeza, there is things that we can improve with the time as technology comes in, as things come in, as time pass on. So let's be very, very cautious of the document. But two, the issue specifically ambayo imeulizwa na wenzetu, what I can say, it is very, very important these issues come. Ndio pia sisi tunasikiza. Ndio kwa maana tumekuja to the field, ndio pia tusikie wenye wako on the ground, what are the issues, ni vitu gani zinawasumbua, ama tungesaidia kama directors. And I can assure you, things like approvals, things like safety, things like training, those are very key to us. Kama vile mwenzangu hapa amesema, mzee mwenzangu amesema, ametengeza, you made a wall, retaining wall, which is commendable, kama imestand, kwa maana hiyo inasumbua watu wengi. Lakini I would urge, as we do those things, we also know there are also professionals involved in those kind of, because that is a geotechnical side of engineering. Na ndio kwa maana mahali mingi unapata hiyo retaining wall imetengezwa mara mingi sana, baada ya mvua ina collapse. Sasa ni kweli, kwa maana watu wanajua hii kama haijatengezwa kuwa designed properly, anytime there is rain, so the pressure increases on the wall, most of the time it will collapse kama haijatengezwa vizuri. So let us also use professionals. Umeleta mambo, mzee mwenzangu pale amesema mambo ya architect, other professionals awaji kwa site. As NCA, one of the things tunaangalia sahi sana ni the professionals input in construction. So hata tukienda kwa site ama tufanye inquiry, one of the most important thing tunaangalia ni professionals. What is their involvement? hata tunaitisha ile kitabu ya site, tuone what is the involvement of the professionals. Kwa maana kama hiyo professional hayuko, then who is guiding this project? There's no one guiding. Mwingine tu anasema wacha niweke hii chuma, wacha nitoe hii. And also the professionals coming, are they competent in terms of the numbers? Kwa maana unaweza pata professional moja yuko na a lot of assignments, hata time yeye ana time. So those are some of the things that we are looking at, including how do we cooperate more with the counties, because counties, that is their primary responsibility. Approval and following up to see that the building comes up in a safe manner and also as per the approval. So if someone changes something, then it is not as per the approval. So counties and NCA, we are reaching out to counties so that we work together as a team. Ndio wasiwe pande ile na sisi tuko pande hii. Because if you do that, people take advantage. So we want to close in. My colleague pale amesema mambo ya competency based. We are recognizing, tuna recognize huyo fundi ametrain mwenyewe. Amejitrain, huyo monkey aliona na monkey akadu. So hivyo, we are recognizing that. We are even coming with a competency based curricula, so that we recognize and we see, we assess how competent is this fundi. But again, as my colleague says, you also come to us, tell us you are there. How do we accredit you if we don't know you are there? Ukituona unafunga, wama unatoroka. Don't toroka. Tell us I am here. I require this. Nafikiri sio mara mingi umeona NCA wanakuja kufunga watu. Hata kama wanaweka hiyo X, mzee wetu amesema ni X ya kurekebisha. Urekebishe, ukuje utueleze umerekebisha, ndio uendelee na mjengo yako. And then finally, I would urge everyone that our offices in the region, please utilize the offices in the region. If you are having challenges, I am sure they'll give us their contacts so that we can be able to fully appreciate what they are doing. Na wenye tunatengeza, tunajenga mafundi na wengine. Mimi kama developer nikikuambia tupunguze chuma, wewe naye usipunguze tu chuma. Wewe unajua kabisa hii architect na amechora hivi, engineer amekuja akachora design yake. Alafu mwenye nyumba anakuambia wacha tuache kuweka Y16, wacha tuweke hii Y10. Si hata Y10 ni chuma. Wewe mwenyewe unaendelea unaweka Y10. Sasa wacha tuone, hata sisi tunaambia huyo mwenye nyumba iwezekani ama ni risk. Kwa maana hiyo nyumba ikiangukiwa, watu wangapi wamekufa wameangukiwa na nyumba inajengwa? How many times that we have gone? Si ni mara mingi? Na watu gani wanaadhiriwa? Si ni mafundi? Mafundi ndio kwanza wanaadhiriwa, sio mwenye nyumba. Ni mara moja mbili ndio tumeona mwenye nyumba ameangukiwa. Na tukasema hiyo afadhali huyo ameangukiwa, kwa maana yeye ndiye alisema yapunguze hizo chuma. Lakini wewe kama wewe utaangukiwa na hiyo nyumba, kwa nini ukubali kufuata vile unaambiwa? Hata hii column architect aliongea mambo yake. Mimi najua kabisa engineer sio yeye alitaka hizi column. Kwa maana ukienda kwa engineer kabisa, anajua kudesign beams na column on the side, alafu unawacha open space. Lakini mtu akitaka kukata shortcut, anataka safety, ndio unaona anaweka vitu aina hii. Kwa hivyo hii ni tunaona architect pia tunatakiwa kuwakalisha chini kidogo saa nyingine. Lakini asanteni sana, wacha nimalizie hapo.
Asante sana Director Koge. Ile lugha tunaongea leo ni lugha inaeleweka sana. And I'm very happy we are connecting with his sentiments in a very nice way. Now we are moving closer to closing this session. We are very grateful because of our active participation. For all those who have made comments, we are grateful. For those who didn't make comments, once again, we have agreed there are several channels for you to still make your comments known to us. So kindly utilize those channels. Now, we have one member who is also a committee member. I would like to invite him to just rise up like the rest of the members to just show his presence here. He's representing the AG, Sheldon. Hatukuwa na wewe jana, so leo unaweza sema kitu. Hatukuwa na wewe jana. You can just rise up and say something. You can give him a mic. The rest of us had a chance to hear something yesterday. So because of time, today I will not have to give each and every one of us an opportunity. Yes.
Jambo, good afternoon. My name is Sheldon. I'm from the AG's office. I've participated heavily in the redrafting of this code, and I'm happy that we're getting feedback from the stakeholders so that we can improve it further. So we encourage you to keep on giving feedback, and we can improve the document much more. Thanks.
Asante sana, Sheldon. We appreciate your participation. Now, at this point, I would like to invite Coril. Coril is representing our regional coordinator, Architect Nancy Milgo, who is also engaged in other official activities of the authority. Coril will introduce this region, and again, if there is any other member of our staff who is here, then you can also let us know, and then you can invite us officially, because you're our host, to enjoy the services of NCA, including where we are located, the various communication channels that we can use to get to your offices. Karibu sana.
Thank you very much, QS Matu, for the opportunity you've given me to address this congregation. Otherwise, the board members present, the committee members who are also present. We also have the management being led by QS Matu from NCA and all the protocols observed. Let me take this opportunity to welcome you all to Central Eastern Region, which covers 3 particular counties, namely Embu, Kirinyaga, Tharaka, and Meru counties. Let me say, actually, your presence have made this day a success, without which, if you are not around, this day would not have been a success. Otherwise, let me say thank you very much for the time you've taken. I know maybe you could be having so many activities you are engaged in, but at least you've taken this particular time to come to make the day a success. Otherwise, I'm Coril Eric, and let me give an apology from our regional coordinator, Architect Nancy Milgo, who actually is out of the region on official duties in Kisumu, which touches on ISO. She's actually informed me that may I give an apology. She would have loved to be with us this particular day, but it was unfortunate that she could not make it due to the official matter that she has gone to attend to. Otherwise, with me, we also have some of the members from the regional office. We have Grace Mawia, can wave. She's one of our registration officers. We also have Caro Wambui. And finally, we have Donald Kiblagat. That is the team, at least we've managed to be here this particular day. And many others, some of them actually are back in our office to ensure that our daily routine activities are moving on as required. Otherwise, next week, that will be on Thursday, the 25th of February 2021, we shall be having a CBD training which touches on the road maintenance, works, and emerging trends in road, rail, and bridge works, which will be conducted at this particular venue, Kenya School of Government, Embu branch. So let me take this opportunity to invite all of you, also touching on the contractors, our site supervisors, you are also free to join us, or even the skilled workers. That is on next week, Thursday. Feel free. I'm sure you are going to learn a lot from this particular training, which is actually meant to improve on your, professional undertakings when you are carrying out your works. Otherwise, I don't have any much to add on to that. Only maybe when I'm summarizing, whenever you have any thing that you would like maybe the Central Eastern region to get to know, we have our contacts. The telephone number is 0790 410 741. Let me repeat again. It's 0790 410 741. That is our telephone contact for the region. If you'd also like to use the email address, we have an email address which is centraleastern@nca.go.ke. As I repeat, it is centraleastern@nca.go.ke. If you have any complaint, any compliment, feel free to use those particular channels, and I will be glad to receive, and we'll also revert back to you. Otherwise, with those very few remarks, let me say thank you very much. May God bless you as you are going to leave back to your various destinations. I wish you all the very best, journey mercies, and above all, God's blessings. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much for those very wise words, Eric, Coril, our representative from this region. Those are good sentiments aired on behalf of our regional coordinator. So in case of anything, ladies and gentlemen, Coril is there. And again, also our regional coordinator. We have our officers seated right there. So you can get in touch with them. And if there's anything you need from us, we're always at hand to support and to also serve you. Now, we are coming to the end of the sessions for today. I know to a great extent, Coril has extended appreciations to most of us. And I first want to say on behalf of our management, led by our executive director, Engineer Maurice Akech, whom I represent here today, I would like to say first sincere thanks to our board of directors, who are ably represented today by Director Paul, who has just left. Also, Director Koge and Director Waweru, who are still seated here with us. We say thank you because of allowing, number one, this activity to happen, but even secondly, to be part and parcel of what is going on here today. So we feel your support and we sincerely appreciate that. We are very grateful to the committee members. I had introduced you early in the morning, and lately I've been able to introduce Sheldon. We are very grateful for the kind of support that you have given to us. We are also very thankful to all the participants of today. This activity would not have been a success minus your presence. So we are grateful, and the feedbacks we have gotten will go a long way in terms of making this document a major document or a better document. We appreciate the team that is relaying information live on the social media platforms. We have a lot of feedback that is coming from the social media players. Our Facebook is actually live. We have the YouTube, which is live, and we are still receiving comments on those channels. Those are also participants, public participants, and we also appreciate what is coming from them. So from wherever they are seated, we are also very grateful that they managed to join us today. We appreciate the role played by Kim, who has been very active in terms of coordinating the activities of today. Would not be very successful without his involvement and coordination. And for that, Kim, we say asante sana, feel most appreciated. We are also very thankful to the host of today, that is our counterpart government agency, that is the Kenya School of Government, and all of us who managed to be present here today. I think all of us have played a major role in terms of making today's activity a great success. So from me, it's a sincere thanks. Thank you so much. And now at this juncture, I would like to hand over to our director, Waweru Gadesha, to make the closing remarks. Karibu sana, director.
Thank you very much, QS Madhu. You have summarized well, and especially in terms of gratitude to all those who have made today possible. I therefore needn't repeat that. I will give a broad thank you to all participants and everybody who's here, and I will end that gratitude by saying this. Whereas this hall may not be full, we all know that any society, any family, any country is changed by the few, not by the many. Those of us who have come here are the disciples of this message, and we are more than 12, so we know we'll get the message out there. We will be the cause of change. Yes. So I ask you to be the disciples. We've had good discussions. Tuende huko kwa grao, and we make the change that needs to be made in this country. With regard to the code, and especially the last exchanges we had, I want to say to all of us, and that includes us at the board and everybody to the ground, this document will impact our society once we take it into our hearts and minds. Wakati ambapo fundi kwa grao atajua kuna code, he'll have it on site. Every so often, weekly meeting, tunaangalia, are we doing what is correct? Sindio? That is when we'll make a change. Because change, si drawing ya architect, si drawing ya engineer. Change ni wakati ambapo building yenyewe inaiga code. Sindio? When the fundi who's actually building, anajua code inasema A, B, C, and D, bila kuambiwa. Whether it is from his training or from his practice. Because you're right, kuna wenye wamefanya kazi miaka mingi, and many of them, wenye walisoma zamani, wenye walitrainiwa zamani, they know the correct thing to do. What we are seeing today is, ni kama kuna upotevu wa knowledge or something is happening, whether forced by the developer, whether ni architect haja attend site since foundation uchimbe, and so on and so forth. It is upon us to try and get back to the right path. Sindio? E-document is just one of the instruments we can use to increase our knowledge of construction, to increase the quality of construction. Output ya leo, ya kesho kutwa, iwe ina reflect a society that is moving forward. Mzee kama utasomesha kijana yako engineering or anything in construction, he should be doing better than you, sindio? Ultimately, that's what you want. What story mingi? We need a building that is better than the one umejenga, sindio? So I appreciate those comments, and I want to say to the committee, especially Dr. Karaoke, as you sit down and carve a way forward, and I'm also saying to us as NC, of course, we really have to think, how are we going to be impactful so that we don't produce a beautiful document that does not cascade its impact to the ground, so that, you know, we could easily have a conversation between ourselves, almost navel gazing. I speak to an engineer there, I speak to you there, I speak to an engineer here, I speak to QS, and we publish a good document and we launch it with a lot of fanfare, but on the ground it has no impact. That for me, I think, is the key difference we can make. So we have to devise ways, once the document is finished and published, I think that is when our work begins. So that in 5 years' time, as we come to review the document, we can also review its impacts. That actually is a central reason why I asked my question. Watu kwa grao, fundi kwa site, supervisor, anakuanga na hiyo code, inakaa aje? I've heard that Embu, hatuna code kwa grao, sindio? Kama ni chuka, kama ni wherever it is. Because kama haipo, then what are we referring to, sindio? Let's make that difference. Let's be the people who take this gospel out there, to preach, not to tusichoke. Because construction si guesswork, sindio? ushajenga Runyenjes miaka mingi, yes. We know they are difficult developers. Even as architects we find them, eh? But mtu akikwambia toa hizi chuma ama tumia round bars instead of deformed, or all the things that we see, you're the one sasa when ndio kwa grao, you're the one who will make a difference, eh? Because also remember, as NCA, tukikam kwa grao, the first person ambao tunatafuta, tuseme shida ipatikane, ni wewe contractors, ndio? Wewe ndio unaadhirika the first, yes? Let's be the people who make a difference in this country, because nchi ni yetu, tukiwa Kenya. Developer akienda elewane na msee mwingine overnight kwa bar, wacha elewane. But if he's asking you to put yourself in jeopardy, ujenge visivyo, then shida ni yako pia, si ndio? And as my colleague said, the people who get injured on sites, dangerous sites, ni nyinyi wajenzi, si ndio? Ule jamaa mwingine atapigiwa simu, atajua kuna tafash, first thing ni atazima simu. Yes, na utampata. Okay? Anyway, tushaongea mengi, and if there's nothing else that you remember that I said, this document needs to have impact on the ground. The work of designing the document has been done, writing standards, writing whatever it is. It will be panel beaten per stakeholders' input, so we are thankful for that. But like in any good project, we must have our implementation plan and monitoring and evaluation such that it achieves its correct and final purposes to improve built environment. Zaidi hapo, I just want to thank everybody again. Finally, appreciate all of you. Tell you that National Construction Authority, tuko na nyinyi step by step, unyo kwa unyo. As I said, many of us are in construction. NCA nilingia juzi and I won't be there forever. Well, si juzi sana, but I'll not be there forever. Kazi yangu pia ni kwa grao. So I hope we'll be seeing you, and I hope we'll continue to see you in these sorts of NCA functions. Na huku kwengine pia. All towards making Kenya a better place, and for us, construction sector sana sana. Thank you very much, GM Madhu, because you've been the chair session. Sometimes you get forgotten. You thanked everybody and then nobody thanked you. So thank you. Thank you to our video cameraman. You've done a good job. I hope you've portrayed us very well. And I hope this message has gone out to more stakeholders than have attended. It is now a few minutes to 2. I've been asked to close this session, and therefore I can now declare this today's stakeholder forum officially closed. Tembeni salama, and have a good weekend. The rest of housekeeping, I'll hand back to session chair. Thank you.
Asante sana, Director Waweru. Those are good comments when they are coming last. And thank you for wishing us the blessings that we so much need today and going forward. So we have received that request of making sure that the building code, its impact is felt on the ground. And I think coming from the training, we'll try as much as possible. Number one, to make sure that there's a lot of learning happening about this building code across the country in all our training programs. It's, I think, from us, is a more practical approach to making the impact of the code being felt. Now, tutaenda lunch, tutaenda tukule chakula chetu za, inaitwa lunch, inaitwa namna gani na Kiswahili? Huh? You know when you start, chakula cha? Chakula cha mchana. Sawa basi. It is when you start speaking Swahili, you realize it's actually a very difficult language. Yeah, so tuende tukule chakula cha adhuhuri ama cha mchana. But before we do that, we need to take a group photo. So tutatoka nje, we'll ask the ladies assisting us. We have the secretariat out here. Watatuambia pale mahali pazuri where we can take a group photo. Our camera people, you can quickly organize yourselves so that at least we have something for future. Tuseme tulikuwa hapa pamoja. Thanks for making it happen. I would like to request someone to pray for us. Engineer Jane, do you mind praying for us?
Our Heavenly Father, we thank you for the opportunity that you give us even to be in this public participation forum of NCA. We thank you, Jehovah God, for every comment that we have received, oh God. We pray, Jehovah God, that you will help us, even as NCA and even the committee that is working on this document, even to make it better, to take into consideration those comments. We are praying for every stakeholder involved here, that you may bless them in their work, even as they do the construction of this country, that you may help us even to take our Lord wherever we work. We are praying this afternoon that even as we go for lunch, that you may bless that lunch, that it shall be of benefit to our bodies. And we pray for journey mercies, even as we go back to our places where we came from, that you may protect us and our families. May you bless this country. May you bless the people of this country. In Jesus' name we pray. Amen.
Amen, asante sana. Kwaherini na tukule lunch vizuri, tupige picha. Lunch, Kim? Lunch tunakula pande gani?
So lunch will be served in the room just ahead of us here. Picha Alaska.
Yeah. Tunaweza toka kama tunajua tutapiga picha wapi. Na msisahau mkoba wako. Yesterday I forgot my bag somewhere, so usisahau yako.